friends, Heidi here from Rain Country. God is good all the time, and I'm here somewhat by request to cover this topic on what to do for emergency backup toilet in the event that you cannot use your toilet for whatever reason. This is mostly going to apply to people in apartments, people who don't have their own septic tanks, people who don't have composting toilets in outhouses. So maybe this won't apply to you, but if you have a flushable toilet of any kind, even if you have a septic tank, it's still a good idea to have some kind of backup, because toilets can get backed up for whatever reason and it might take a while to be able to get it repaired, or your septics can back up, or with the city sewer. There can be all kinds of issues there. So obviously the first thing is, if you're able to have a composting toilet and you have the space to be able to compost that stuff, setting up a composting toilet can be extremely cheap. You do not have to pay thousands of dollars for a big, fancy, expensive composting toilet. It can be something as simple as a 5-gallon bucket and a toilet seat to attach to it. That's if you're actually going to compost the materials that are in there. If you're unable, you don't have a place to actually compost that, then you're going to want to look at getting some heavy-duty plastic bags to line that bucket with. You can also line your toilet with that and use your own toilet the same way, but you want to make sure if you're doing that, you get the right size to fit over the toilet bowl, because the kind of compostable bags that they make, and yes, they do make compostable plastic bags, the ones they make like for camping are made to fit over 5-gallon buckets, but not over a toilet bowl, because a toilet bowl is wider and more shallow than obviously a 5-gallon bucket. Now we actually do, I just never think to talk about it because it's not something we'd use on a regular basis, but we do have out at our other piece of property, because we don't have a septic there or any running water, we do have a 5-gallon bucket, and then with that we keep a bucket of wood shavings from Patrick's shop. We have a toilet seat that snaps in place, plus we have some of the compostable bags to go with that. So I'll link down below to the bags that we have, but I recommend just doing a thorough search and researching them all. We've only used one bag so far. It was a couple years ago when we had some family camping out there. We got one of those nicer, bigger shower tents that we set up that can also work as a toilet tent, and that's what we did for them as a form of an outhouse. As we had the bucket, the wood shavings, the bag, and the toilet seat, and they actually used that. I think we only went through one bag, maybe we went through two, and we didn't have any issues with the bags. And when it comes to those, yes, you can just throw those away with regular garbage. You just want to make sure it's sealed up well, you don't have any leaks in your bags. Ours didn't leak, they were tough, they made it through, and they were compostable. So that's pretty good. So if it's going into a landfill, you know it's going to break down. But just like with the ones we have, there are several out there that you can also bury in the ground. But if you're in one place, and this is something you're going to have to do frequently, and you don't either have a backyard or enough space to keep burying these bags, you're going to still want to find a better way to dispose of them. And a lot of times in certain emergency situations, you might not even have waste disposal coming to pick up your garbage. So that could be an issue too. I mean, it's got to be disposed of one way or the other. And if you're living in an apartment, I really only see that pretty much as your only option. And if you don't have any waste disposal coming to pick up your garbage, it might be something you're going to have to go dispose of yourself somewhere else, because obviously you can't have it build up in your apartment, and you don't want to keep digging holes if you got a tiny little yard to put these bags in. So for us, in that case, even though we could have just buried it on the property, the 1 or 2 bags that we had, we just disposed of them in the garbage, and it's totally fine. They are meant for that. But with that, whether it be you're putting the bags in the toilet itself or in a 5-gallon bucket with a seat, it's still highly recommended that you have some kind of organic, biodegradable material that you're going to throw in there with it. That's going to do a couple of things. That's going to help reduce the smell and also absorb any excess liquids to keep it more solid. Now they do make what's supposed to be like a biodegradable kinds of gels that you can throw in there. I don't know about that stuff. And I think that can get really expensive. So I say look at other things that you might already have on hand. For a lot of people, it might simply be newspapers, just shredding up a whole bunch of newspapers and keeping that handy. So every time you use that, you're going to put a layer of that down. So when I set that out there at the property for our family, we put a layer of wood shavings at the bottom right away. So there's something in there to catch any liquids. And then every time they used it, they would just take a scoop and just cover that up. And that really will do a lot to keep the smell down. But if you don't have access to the wood shavings like we do, we always have plenty. Again, the newspaper. Another one is kitty litter. So even if you don't have cats, like we don't have cats, having a bag of kitty litter on hand has many uses, many uses for kitty litter. I'm not even sure. I think we do have some kitty litter around here that I have on hand just in case we ever need it. But this is one of those situations where, I mean, that's what it was made for. It was made to absorb liquids and odors, and specifically look for the kitty litters that don't have a bunch of perfumes and all that unnatural stuff to them. Most of them are just made out of a clay. That's all they are. That's totally natural. And that it can be an easy thing to pick up for fairly inexpensive and have on hand. And again, just layer it. Put a little at the bottom and then put a little at top of each time you use it. A couple other options can be dry leaves. So if it's in the fall, you got a lot of leaves and they're nice and dry, they haven't been rained on, those can work. So can dry grass clippings. So you have several options, and I'm sure there's quite a bit more out there. I know you can get peat moss and things like that that you can also use. You just try to look at whatever's going to be the cheapest, easiest thing for you to get a hold of to use in that situation, and make sure you have that on hand in case this ever happens. Because I had a friend who, they had some major issues with their septic one year, and they had to resort to using a bucket out in their backyard with a little tent that they made around it. So just like with anything else, it might be something that only affects you, and maybe you don't have the money for the very expensive repairs it's going to cost to fix that, or it could be a few days before you could get that problem resolved, or longer. So having some sort of backup is going to be very important in this situation. If you have the ability, the space, and all that to have a composting toilet, I do highly recommend going with that. Now, we don't currently have one other than the bucket thing that I talked about there, which could be considered a composting toilet, but we don't have set compost areas, certainly not right here, and not even out at the other piece of property at this time, that we would want to use that with. But it is something I highly recommend looking into. Now, I don't have all the information that I can share with you about it on experience in that. So what I want to do is refer you to a couple of different channels that I'll link to down below, and that is Off Grid with Doug and Stacy and An American Homestead. Both of them use composting toilets that they built themselves, basically just using 5-gallon buckets, but they built their nice little setup themselves, and then they have their separate composting piles. And it's one of those things, you got to let it break down for at least a year, maybe it's 2 years, but you have to have 2 or 3 different piles that you're cycling through, and then that compost can be used around fruit trees and certain other perennials at that point, and it's going to be totally safe. But I do recommend you check out their channel. Another thing I'm going to link to down below, which I don't have yet, I keep meaning to get a hold of, but I've heard excellent reviews on, and that is the book on humanure. And that you read that and you're going to learn a lot about how all that works. So if you're thinking about going more permanently to something like that, that can be a really great option, and then you'll never have to worry about having an emergency backup toilet as we've got here. But I'm throwing this out here because not everybody has the option to be able to do that. So really it's easy as far as coming up with a way to have a toilet. The harder part can be how do you dispose of it, depending on where you're located and what's available to you. So those are some different considerations you have to look into for yourself. But Still having that there is better than nothing. Even if you don't know for certain yet how exactly you're going to be able to dispose of it, you're still going to need to have a toilet of some kind to use. And again, it can be very cheap. I think we paid like $8, maybe $12 for that toilet seat. And then we've always got 5-gallon buckets around here that come from various different things. So just, you know, you don't even have to worry about it being a food grade bucket, obviously. Just any 5-gallon bucket, a toilet seat to snap onto the top, and some biodegradable bags that are heavy duty. And here was what I was going to say about those. Read the reviews on those, because some that I was reading reviews on, a couple of people were complaining that they leaked on them and they had to double bag. So you might want to read through the reviews carefully. It could be that some people in certain brands just ended up with maybe some faulty bags, because I also read really good reviews where people said they were durable, they worked really good for them. But pay attention to all those and just compare everything that you read. And then while I'm at it talking about this topic, also don't forget to have some other methods besides toilet paper to use in the event that there's no toilet paper to use. So for me, I've been using the cloth wipes. I'll link to my most recent video about the cloth wipes, how I use them, how I wash them up, down below. Some people have a bidet, whether it be a permanently installed bidet, which can be really expensive. Some people go really cheap by simply getting just a squirt bottle that they use, or they attach a kitchen type sprayer to their toilet and plumb it into the line there where they can get water from it, so it would work the same way as it would in your kitchen sink. Or you can even get a bidet that doesn't cost very much that you attach to your regular toilet. So some people have gone that method. So there's very many different ways that don't have to cost you much at all. And a lot of people prefer the bidet method. But along with that, some things to consider, especially if you're out and about. I heard about these from Canadian Prepper, I think a couple years ago. And these are the Whizzy wipes. I think they make a few different ones. And they're great because they're this tablet. And I did do a video, I think, on them. But it's just a tablet that fits perfectly into these little waterproof match containers. And so I keep a container of these. I keep one in my purse, and I keep a container in each one of our rigs. And then I took the rest of them and vacuum sealed them up into they don't need to be vacuum sealed, but just to make sure they stay dry, vacuum sealed them into a jar, all the excess. I've yet to need to use one, but they're pretty handy, and they don't have to just be used as backup toilet paper. They can be used for other things. Once you wet them down, you just need a couple of drops of water on them is all, and they will start to expand, and it unfolds to be about this big. And they're a little bit stretchy. They can be used for cleaning your hands, your face, or anything else with. And if you're only using them to just wipe something down or clean your face or hands, you can rinse them out really good and then use them again. They're tough enough for that, but they're also biodegradable if you are using them for toilet paper. They will break down. So that's something to consider having on hand, but it's not something I would use as backup toilet paper just around the house when you have other options like bidets, spray bottles, and cloth wipes which really do wash up super easy. So anyway, a few more ideas there. So I hope you found this video helpful, and don't forget to check out those channels that I'll be putting down below if you're more interested in a composting toilet, as well as that book, and something that's going to be a more permanent setup for you. For us, by the way, we have our own septic tank, and we don't worry about it because we eat pretty healthy. So when you eat healthy, you don't have to get your tank pumped out near as often. In fact, the last time we pumped it out, the guy, he's an expert at this. He can look in your septic tank and tell how healthy of an eater you are. And he knew right away that we eat well because of the condition of our septic tank. So that's something too. If you're on a septic tank, just know that eating healthy not only helps you and your body, it also helps prolong the health of your septic tank and the time it takes to need it pumped out. We can go for 10 years without needing it pumped, literally. So anyway, just another little food for thought as far as that goes. And if you got any other tips and ideas you'd like to share, please put those down below. What do you use? What's your backup method? I'm sure there's plenty of you out there that might have all kinds of different great ideas you can share with us. All right, well, thanks for watching. Take care, and God bless.